The River Beneath the Fear, Demystifying Plant Medicine, Part 1. People keep asking me to take them into the dark, not in a frightening way, in the way that means I've heard what's possible and I want to find out if it's true for me. Something has shifted in the last year. The inquiries have been coming in steadily, from women in transition, from people sitting with grief they can't metabolize through talk therapy alone, from seekers who've tried everything rational and are finally willing to try something that moves at a different speed. They want to journey, and they want someone they trust to hold the space. This work, facilitating psilocybin journeys, is some of the most sacred work I do. I don't say that lightly. As a transition doula, I've sat with people in some of the most tender passages of their lives. But there's something particular about what happens when the medicine is present. The veil between what we know and what we've been avoiding becomes very thin. What the body has been holding in silence finally gets to speak. I've been hesitant to write about this work directly. Plant medicine still carries stigma, and I'm careful about how I move in public spaces with it. But the questions keep coming, and my silence on the subject has started to feel less like discretion and more like withholding something that could genuinely help people. So, this is the beginning of a series. Over the next several essays, I'm going to demystify psilocybin, not clinically, not evangelically, but honestly. I'll share the journeys that changed my life, the one that removed fear from my body like a hand lifting a stone, the one where I watched someone I loved die and was told I was ready, the one where a light was placed into my womb and I spent hours in what felt like labor, bringing a new version of myself into form. I'll write about what it means to facilitate this work, what I do before, during, and after a journey, and why I believe preparation and integration matter more than the journey itself. And I'll write about why I think psilocybin, held in the right container, is one of the most powerful transition doula tools I have. But I want to start where I always start, with my own body and what the medicine first taught it. What I thought it would be. I came to psilocybin the way a lot of people do, with a mixture of curiosity and low-grade fear. I had heard the stories. I understood intellectually that research was emerging. I was open, but I was also a woman who had spent years in her head, and I expected the experience to live there too. I expected visuals. I expected strangeness. I expected something that would feel unmistakably other. What I did not expect was to feel more like myself than I ever had. The cruise. I was on a cruise with my partner when I took a dose before a day at the beach. What followed was hours in that soft, luminous space where everything feels alive. Color more saturated, sound more layered, presence more available. It was beautiful and it was manageable, and when we returned to the ship, I was deeply altered and grateful to have someone steady beside me to get back to the cabin. Once I was safe in bed, something shifted. It felt like being pulled under, not in fear, but in the way you surrender to sleep when you finally stop resisting it. My eyes were closed. I probably looked like I was resting, but I was more awake than I ever had been. I found myself in what I can only describe as a river of consciousness, not a metaphor, a felt experience. I could ask a question and feel the answer arrive immediately, the way a tuning fork resonates with a tone before you've consciously registered the sound. I felt my ancestors with me. I felt the presence of something vast and unhurried and entirely unconcerned with my anxiety. There were no dramatic visuals. There was knowing, full-bodied, cellular, unambiguous knowing. This isn't all there is. Death is not to be feared. Fear itself is a waste. These were not thoughts I was having. They were truths being etched into me. There is a difference, and I felt it completely. What the medicine actually does. I've come to understand that psilocybin doesn't add anything, it removes. It removes the static, the low-grade hum of anxiety that most of us have normalized so thoroughly we've mistaken it for our own voice. The hypervigilance, the looping thoughts, the fear noise that sits between us and our deeper knowing like a layer of interference. What that layer dissolves, even briefly, what's underneath is not chaos. It is clarity. It is the body's intelligence, finally audible. I've written before about intuition as a signal that requires quiet to receive. Fear is the loudest thing in most of our nervous systems. It drowns everything until we're safe again. What psilocybin did in that cabin on that ship was make me feel safe in a way I hadn't been able to manufacture on my own. Not numb, not detached, safe. And in that safety, I could finally hear the river that had been running beneath the noise all along. When I returned from that experience, something had shifted in how I moved through the world. The weight of anxiety I had carried for years, the self-doubt, the overthinking, the bracing, had softened. not disappeared overnight, softened, as if something had been set down. In the days that followed, strangers kept opening up to me, deeply. A woman spoke about her husband's death. A man cried, recounting a childhood wound. People told me things in elevators and on pool decks that I imagined they hadn't told anyone in years. I didn't seek this out. I think I was simply more present, less defended, less preoccupied, and people could feel it. That quality of presence, that's what I try to bring into the journey space when I'm facilitating. Not expertise, not control, presence. The willingness to be fully with someone while the medicine does what the medicine does. Why I do this work. The river of consciousness the medicine introduced me to that afternoon has never fully closed. I've come to understand that it was always there. The medicine didn't create it, it showed me where to find it. And the practice of returning to it through presence and breath and quiet and occasional ceremony is something I try to pass on to the people I work with. When someone comes to me wanting to journey, what they're really asking, underneath all the questions about dosage and logistics, is, will I be safe? Will someone be with me in the dark? The answer I can give from my whole body is yes. That is the work, not guiding someone toward a particular experience or outcome, holding the container steady while they find their own river, staying present while the noise dissolves and something true gets a chance to speak. Next in this series, the journey that asked me to lose something and what arrived in the space they left behind. This essay calls on Nyx, the Greek primordial goddess of night, she who existed before the gods, before order, before light. Nyx does not frighten us in the dark. She invites us into it. She reminds us that the river of consciousness runs deepest in the quiet hours, in the space our waking minds cannot control. It is there, in her domain, that fear loses its grip and something older and truer rises to the surface. She is not the absence of light. She is what holds the light when we are ready to receive it. If you're feeling called to work with psilocybin and want experienced, intentional support in preparation, facilitation, or integration, I'd love to connect. You can reach me at www.goddessintraining.online. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share so I can continue this sacred work.